Hello, good day, one and all. Thank you for joining me today. We have gone back slightly in what we were doing with the podcast, in that you can now find this episode on YouTube as well as Spotify. The reason being, I have my first guest, and I'm so excited to have my first guest on the podcast. It's absolutely amazing. So you can get this on YouTube or Spotify. All links will be available to you. Today we're going to talk about change, because it's something that I'm doing with Leadership Excellence and trying to develop something that will really help organizations to make learning stick and make change happen when a learning initiative happens and goes forward. But what I've got today is somebody that I've worked with previously on a management development course program. And this individual has made huge steps to make those changes stick and make them actually last. So it felt only fitting to have him in as the first guest on my episode. So I hope that you find it useful. I hope that you enjoy listening to somebody else's voice and not just my own. And if you do want to interact with the podcast, folks, as usual, you can reach out via WhatsApp on 07925 136 011 or email on info@leadershipexcellence.co.uk. And as we know, excellence is spelt with an EQ. But for now, let's go and listen to a nice conversation about change and learning and see where we go from there. Excellent. Thank you so much for joining today for another episode of Listen, Learn, Grow. I'm extremely excited today because, as you can see, folks, I'm not on my own. I've got the brilliant Chris with me. And to give you a bit of background very quickly, Chris and I worked together on a program a little while ago whilst in another organization. So, Chris, it is great to have you here. Thank you so much for being my first guest on the podcast. I'm so grateful and honored to have you here.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure, Alan. Thank you for having me on your podcast, and the honour of being the first guest. To be cheesy, long time listener, first time caller.
I love it. That's it. Fantastic. Brilliant. It is amazing to have you on. So just to give a bit of background, as I said, we did a program together where you joined me for a management development program. And the reason I really wanted to get you on today is that something that I'm trying to really talk about, as well as development and leadership skills, is the need for us to be able to change our behaviors and change things that we're doing off the back of learning initiatives and everything else. And one thing with yourself that has stood out massively to me is that you have made massive changes to yourself, significant changes.
Yeah.
And I think what makes it even more powerful is the fact that you did it without having an ADHD diagnosis, which we'll go into in a bit more detail. But the great thing is it fits so well into what I'm trying to create, which is the behavior shift methodology. And I thought it was only right to get somebody like yourself to be able to come in and kind of share your story, because for me, that's what it's about, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. So what I think is the best way to do it is we'll look at kind of a before and after, but I do think that the after will kind of come as we're going through it naturally. So if we kind of think with the before, the going right the way back, I realize it was probably what, 2, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe?
Four, mate, four. I was
4 years
counting
ago.
it before.
Wow. That's a long time ago. Wow. So thinking back to 4 years ago, which some people might find it hard, for you, I've got no doubt you're good with it. But before the program, what would you say stood out to you most about how you led people?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, thinking about it really is that what stood out was I didn't see myself as a leader, to be honest.
Mm.
Certainly, I always thought leadership came with job titles and job roles, and certainly the job role wasn't at the time. It wasn't to be it wasn't a team manager, it wasn't a leader, but it was just that feeling that I'd always work collaboratively with the other department area, sort of the best answers and the best atmosphere. But if challenged, either by management or by another member of the team as to whether this was the right thing to do or not, I would often not have the confidence, I suppose, that the job title or role brings, and would just kind of shrink.
Mm.
But then the opportunity came up, to do the course. And during that, it was really the realization that anybody and everybody is and can be sort of a leader.
Mm.
And I think that was a bit of a watershed that feeling of like leadership doesn't come with the role, doesn't come with the title. Leadership is a mindset. Um, so it was a case of like, even though at that time I was doing the course, I at first thought it was prepping me for when those sorts of roles came up. I realized that actually I could start using these techniques now.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess off the back of that, so you realize that you could start making those changes already. But do you think that the biggest hindrance, and we're not blaming any organization or any people here, but do you think that it was actually that limitation that you had from an organization or from the organization at the time? Because that's one of the biggest things I see in behavioral change, is that the conditions aren't necessarily there. So do you feel the conditions were absent?
I absolutely, and I think I mean it's probably been true a lot. It's certainly in the past, it's been true a lot of organisations where there's a feeling of like either stay in your lane, or people who sort of step outside or are viewed as troublesome, as opposed to maybe being people who are just thinking of sort of hard to describe, like different approaches to doing something, new approaches to doing something. Because
of course,
one answer I always hated to the question of oh, why do we do something like this, or why are we doing like this? Always hated the answer. Oh, well, that's just how we've always done it, And you're thinking, yeah, but before 20 years have gone by, we're still doing it in this very old-fashioned sort of way. And business and life has evolved, but the processes haven't sort of gone with it.
Yeah, definitely.
But what you find is, like, sort of like senior management, they're not in touch with the how things are done. They're just like, well, look, things are getting done, brilliant. Really, that's where you sort of need to be led from the team, who are producing the work, or using the systems, and giving them sort of like empowerment to be able to lead on their own their own work, and how they do that work, and how they deliver those results.
Nice. And you touched on something so important there, the why. In the program, I know that we talked a lot about the why, and it's so important to kind of be able to understand and be able to move forward with that. So is that something that you would say that you've potentially taken forward with yourself in helping your team, helping yourself to understand the why behind these changes, or anything else?
Absolutely. One of the first things, I started a new role maybe 5 months ago now, I think.
Congratulations.
Time moves on. One of the things I did was to take the time to sit with each sort of member of the team and sort of shadow them, is to understand from their point of view, what it is that they're doing, as well as a chance to feedback on what they think works about the processes that they're doing, what they think is a hindrance, but also a fresh set of eyes to look and think, okay, I understand why it's been done this way, but
could we do anything differently?
Yeah, it's like, but either is it by introducing a new system, a new bit of tech, or something that could just speed up and make their lives easier. And again, it's like, but to do that, I need to understand why they're collecting that data in the first instance. It's like, what's the purpose of this data? You're going out there, you're collecting it, great. What's the purpose of it? And it's just like following. I said, I just call it following the data to its, basically from inception to its end. So almost a loop. Where does that request for information come from? What do you do to get that and deliver that information? And then what do you do with it afterwards, and where does it go? And if it goes back to that same person, what does that person do with it? And then mapping that, sort of map that out to say, right, well, this is how it is at the moment. And then it's like, okay, what can I do? What can we do?
Definitely.
To sort of make that process more efficient, or work harder. Because some organisations you go into and they use Excel, but really they're just one step above pen and paper. They're using Excel, but they're using it as they would,
Definitely.
paper and writing stuff on. And it's like, but if we can, if we can get the system into some sort of digital format, and we can start doing analysis and reports on it, without having to feed it into another sheet somewhere else down the line.
Definitely,
That
definitely.
sort of thing.
I love it. But you've even mentioned there just making lives easier. And one thing I will just acknowledge, you may not have seen it, but there was a proper cinematic moment there when you said about it's not just me, it's we. The camera zoomed in on you. It looked amazing.
Oh, well,
That was like a proper cinematic moment there. I love that. For those of you that are listening on Spotify, you should head over to YouTube, this is where it will be kind of placed, and you can see that cinematic moment. It was beautiful. But you talk about making lives easier, and I think that's kind of a really key element. And I guess for me, you've already touched on it, but I guess I'd like to really know that if we're thinking about, again, the program, was there a specific moment for you where something clicked, be it during or after the program? You mentioned about the ability, the acknowledgement that you don't have to have a title to be a leader, but was there anything else, or is that the thing that clicked for you during or after the program?
I know that was one of the things, to be honest, that several things clicked, as the program went on. The thing that was one of the first things that clicked. Another one was when I think that was it was early in the course as well, when we touched upon leadership shadow, leadership shadow that we cast, and it made me think back through all the varied managers I've had throughout the years, and it's made me think about what was it that what were the good ones, what were the bad ones in my view, and what made the good ones good and what made the bad ones bad. And it is thinking, it is that leadership shadow, because when you're within a team, you tend to sort of try and emulate your leaders, your managers. Everybody wants to please their manager. Everybody wants to be doing a good job. So you take, I think of the word, you sort of take the lead from them. You see how they deal with situations and react. You see what they want, and naturally you tend to follow sort of suit or fall in line.
Yeah, of course.
So it starts to make me think, okay, well, what did I like as in managers in the past, and therefore how would I like to lead, and what was it that they did that I would like to do? So that started to make me think about, well, okay, that some of them always seemed calm in a crisis. They always seemed open to feedback, or they were like, look, you go away and you solve it. You come back to me with a solution and things like that. And I thought, well, that's the kind of thing that I really liked. And I think we may have frozen.
That's all right. You've frozen a little bit. You've frozen in a good spot, though. I must say. I mean, whenever I freeze in a dodgy spot, it's mouth one way and everything else. But I can still hear you. You back? You're good? Were you there?
Can you hear me? Great. I'm back.
I can still hear you.
I'm back in the room. That's okay. And apologies to everyone for that. Good old internet. It's just long story short, I started picking the bits that I liked about the way I was treated, and thinking that's how I would want to treat people. But at the same time, that's how I would want to treat myself. Then, I'm very much I will forgive things in others that I won't forgive in myself. So, somebody makes a mistake, I'm like, okay, look, it's a mistake. It's all good. We'll fix it. We'll move forward. We'll try and stop it happening again. Because is it a genuine whoops, I pressed the wrong button, or is it a problem with the process? But if I make a mistake, I don't I don't forgive myself that way. I feel like I've failed, or so it was thinking, well, okay, well, that if I was my leader and I was leading myself, then I would want to be that, to say, well, it's okay, you've made a mistake. How can we stop it? How can we stop happening again? Can we see something in the process where there's a, or whatever? So that's where I really began to start applying these techniques to myself at the time. And it's thinking, right, okay, so, the leadership shadow I would cast on myself would be one of sort of understanding, not micromanaging, that sort of side, having a psychologically safe space, a freedom to sort of like to suggest, to think of new ways to and empower myself. So that was that was quite a watershed moment, and I saw your face light up there.
You mentioned psychological safety is gonna
Yeah.
get me excited, but it's true though. You've led straight into it, and I think that's the great thing with what you're doing, is that you're looking at what people have done previously. You're looking at what's happening around you, and it is said that we don't invent that, we're not born as the leader. We detect what's happening. We kind of take the good bits, we ignore the bad bits, but we kind of grow from learning off other people. And I think that's a really kind of key point in terms of what you're saying. And that psychological safety is brilliant. As you say, my face lit up there. I love it. It's my heart melted a little bit. It was absolutely fantastic. I think that you've talked so much about those kind of elements, those bits, which are fantastic, and that's led into that change. But let's be honest here. For you, what was the hardest thing about changing your behavior? Not just understanding it, because there's a difference, isn't there? I can understand something, but to change it, that's different. What was the hardest thing for you?
So, I mean, the first step is always it's the hardest, and it's the how. I think you touched on it there. We can understand the difference between understanding and changing, and it's the how do I. So I understand it. How do I change? We can know the path, but that's different from walking the path.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's understanding sort of the tools and techniques that I can deploy or use. In sort of making those changes. And that's where I found, as the course progressed, as we came in with we talked about, and you're gonna love this, emotional intelligence, that sort of awareness. And I think, I'm not very good at specific names, but remember there was the iceberg theory as well. And what we see on top is only a small percentage of what's going on underneath. But it's just effective communication as well. That was a really big. That was a massive one for me. That was a massive one, and that one word was huge, and that's effective. Because I was very guilty of it myself. You always had service changes every 3 months or whatever, and invariably day one something wouldn't have gone quite right. It'd be all right by day 2 or 3, but day one, and it would be the classic. Somebody would say, "No, I wasn't aware of that," and then there'd be a mad scramble through, and you say, "Oh, but I did send you an email on, I don't know, 3 weeks ago and it's like, okay, that's communication, but clearly it's not effective communication, because that person didn't know they had to do something with it, or it came in and just got lost in the noise.
Wasn't understood effectively.
So the thing I would look at myself and go, okay, well, what in the process can I do to improve that communication? And it becomes tailoring the communication, not just to the job level, but to the individual person, as to what works better for them, so that they can do theirs. And for some people, it's a phone call the day before. For some people, it's a well-explained, huge text. For some people, it's both. It's finding that level that means that message has been received and clearly understood, and that when we move into day one, they know exactly what it is that they've got to do. And that opened things. That was a big change in my mindset, as to, it's not good enough for me to just say to myself, well, I did tell you, and therefore that's a you problem, not a me problem. It's a we problem. It's an our problem, because I've said something and you've not understood it, and then we've both just gone our separate ways, and it's fell over.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. And I think you're right. It is that, as you acknowledge, you've been specific on effective communication. But I think what I love to pick out from that is that that first step, that reflection, for you to kind of recognize and be transparent with yourself to say, actually, do you know what? I have just been communicating. I haven't been effectively communicating. And for anyone that is listening, one of my favorite episodes is episode number 3, The Power of Words. And you were very unfortunate in the sense that you weren't around to hear me selflessly plug my podcast continuously in the sessions. People in the later programs had it every single session. It was a running thing for me, is that I have anyone has a problem, there's a podcast for that, and always kind of directing, but it works. But that power of words is key.
Those podcasts, as I found have been great, because when I started this new job, I found myself like every day listening to one on the way into work, and it was magnificent sort of refresher on the techniques, about bringing it back to the front and thinking, yes, I'm having that issue and that's brilliant. I can, there's something there I can listen to and use.
I love that. Thank you for your honesty with that. I think it's so important to be able to say, look, that first step is the hardest. That reflection is going to be difficult, but if we're honest and transparent with ourselves, it does kind of work. I want to touch on something that I'd acknowledged in the first piece in the start of this, and I know that you wanted to draw on it as well, and it is your ADHD kind of diagnosis.
Yes.
In that, I know you acknowledged in previous conversations it wasn't that long ago that you had it, so you would have done the program and made these changes, because I know these changes have been going since you did the program with me.
Yes.
As we were doing it going throughout. So obviously you were doing those changes. Then you had a recognition, a diagnosis of ADHD. So I guess what was the shift for you from before the diagnosis to after the diagnosis in terms of your own development, your leadership style? Did it have an impact?
Yeah, to be honest, the ADHD diagnosis has had a profound impact on myself. To be honest, in a way, I don't think I necessarily foreseen. I just thought, okay, well, look, like if I get the diagnosis, nothing changes, but it's just I just better understand myself. But what I found is since the diagnosis and reading up on it, I've been able to identify certain behaviours within myself that probably are more attributable to ADHD. Well, knowing that that's the case provides just a bit of comfort. I said before how I harsh on myself in a way that I'm not on other people. And one of the things amongst ADHD is that sort of catastrophizing about yourself and almost the desire or the need to over deliver. It's almost like overcompensating for the shortfalls within ADHD, and then beating ourselves up for falling basically just short of perfection. Realizing that, I think it's like, okay, and that's a part of that. I understand where that comes from. I can't easily just get rid of that. That's when it is embedded within me, but I can make allowances for it. So, I can tell myself, look, it's okay. You've made a mistake. You start before I start catastrophizing it. Look, it's okay. That it's the ADHD talk, and it's the ADHD that's saying to me, "Oh, you failed. Oh, it's all going to go terribly wrong. Everyone's going to find out." Massive feeling of like imposter syndrome sort of kicks in and all that. But knowing that is associated with ADHD and knowing where that comes from, I'm able to sort of like not nip it in the bud, but just able to better control it, really. Make allowances for it. That then opens up more space and stop. But to turn those feelings of you should do better into a more positive of, well, what can I do to make that better in future? How can I avoid? How can I, So I've always been self-reflective and self-aware, and I've always sort of internalized and interrogated myself on things. But it's always come from previously it'd always come from a negative space, whereas now it's coming from sort of a more positive, yeah, that wasn't perfect. But how if I did it again, how can I do it better?
Mm.
And being
Do you
prepared
think
for the next stage.
I love that. Do you think it was the ADHD diagnosis that did that for you? Do you think it was that specifically that made you think I need to stop being harsh on myself or critical on myself?
Yes, yeah, because I think really before then, I was always aware that I was negative and harsh on myself, but never really knew where that came from. Sometimes I thought, is it just a
Mm,
lack of confidence? Is it?
mm,
So I've always sort of fought through it, but I've never really known where to sort of like go in terms of sort of how to sort of like focus in and tackle on that element. But say
mm,
following the
mm,
ADHD, it just becomes that realization of, okay, it's not just me. There are plenty of people
mm.
out there in the same situation. Um, you know, be kinder to myself.
Yeah.
But it ties in because I suppose it's at the same time that I'd been doing all, like, say, the leadership courses and leading
Mm,
myself and thinking,
mm,
well, how would I lead someone in that situation? Well, why shouldn't I treat
mm.
myself in that sort of same manner?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
then what I found it did was that I was able to actually take accountability for when something didn't go right, but
Mm,
come at it not from it. Oh no, everything's falling apart. I've done terrible. Someone's going to come in and chuck me out the building. To okay, that didn't go right. Why didn't it go right?
hmm.
What can I do? How can I fix it now, and how can I, sort of prevent it, or
Mm.
reduce the risk in future of it
Yeah,
happening
yeah,
again?
I love
And
it.
it's just going through those sort of those steps each time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And do you know what it always leads back to? Emotional intelligence. It
Yeah,
always leads back because you're self-aware, aren't you? You're self-aware.
yeah,
You're managing yourself. That then impacts on you, which then impacts on others. So your social awareness, your relationship management, and I think that's kind of a real key thing. That for me is that bottom line is that you've taken that step to reflect and to do it. And as you say, you've always been reflective, but now you almost have, I wouldn't say an answer because I mean, as we said, this may be a controversial thought. I do think that ADHD is thrown around very easily, particularly in schools nowadays. It seems that way, but that's just my opinion. But I think that wherever we sit on it, and I think for yourself particularly, is having that diagnosis gives you clarity. It gives you
yes,
direction. It gives you something to look at. And for me, that's what I respect massively. However, we use that information and however we utilize that knowledge we have, that's where the difference comes.
absolutely, yeah. I think, yeah, and that's all I do is, if if I can understand myself, then
Mm,
I think I can better help others or better sort of lead others.
mm,
But by me being accountable for my actions openly and honestly with the team, then
mm.
they know that they can also, you know hold their hand up, and be accountable and say, yeah, you know what, I
Mm.
did make that mistake, and
Yeah, definitely.
they themselves can, you know seek solutions to those issues without having someone to go away and impose a process on them, or impose a,
Yeah, yeah.
they're like, no, I know where it went wrong, or I went wrong, and I know what I need to do to fix that. It's like, great, you know I give you the power to do that. You go away, you do that.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah.
we can do it together. Yeah, but seeing a man, if they see that their manager doing that naturally day to day,
Mm-hmm.
it just, it flows. It then starts to flow throughout the team.
Of course it does. Goes back to what you said at the start with the leadership shadow. That's what you're kind of doing. So I think that's brilliant. We're coming to the end of the time, which has gone so quickly. It's
Yeah, I
ridiculous.
can't
I mean,
believe
where
it.
has that time gone? I do have a couple of questions that I just like to kind of ask you, almost like quick fire.
Yeah,
The first one is if someone is listening and feels that they're kind of stuck in their own behaviors, what would you say to them?
I'd say, change is hard. No one's going to
Mm-hmm.
say it's easy,
Mm,
but you know, when it works, and you feel it working, you get hungry for more.
Nice. Like it.
It's satisfying, it's rewarding.
Mm.
And as we talked before, I look back over 4 years, and I can't believe how far I've come in 4 years, and I can't believe where I am now.
Mm.
But I also know it's not the end of the journey.
Nice. I like that.
By using those behavioural changes within myself, is that I keep pushing myself forward. I keep pushing myself into new spaces.
Definitely. And that's the thing. If we want to grow, the only way to grow is to step out of our comfort zone, because guess what? The comfort zone is comfortable. So
Yeah.
you've got to challenge yourself. I guess the last question I have for you then is, in one sentence, it's a challenge for you.
This is the challenge for me,
yeah. What has behavioral change given you?
It's given me a sense of clarity about myself.
Okay.
And it's given me sort of a way forward, and a way to help and to lead others, and to assist them with their journeys, as I've, yourself has been able to assist me with mine.
I love that. I think it is about adding value, and as you say, you take the ability to grow yourself, and then you're able to add that value to other people, and I think that's really key. So brilliant way to kind of finish it off. That simple sentence just, I think, is absolutely spot on. So really what is left is to thank you genuinely from the bottom of my heart. You are my first guest, and I really appreciate you taking that gamble. You've listened to my podcast, but that's been me on my own. Now it's me with somebody else, and I think it's flowed beautifully, and I genuinely thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and being transparent and candid in your story and your journey. And I genuinely hope that you continue doing what you're doing, because it's fantastic work.
Oh, no, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and thank you. First time on a podcast, and I've really enjoyed it. Mine's gone blank.
Happens to the best of us. But it's a two-way reciprocation. You're grateful for coming on. I'm grateful for you coming on. So if we were together, we would do a hug, but we're not, so we won't. So
virtual hug.
Virtual hug all the way. What I will do is just to kind of finish it off now, and I do always finish off my podcasts by wishing everyone well, and just kind of hoping that this has added value to you as a listener, but obviously you as a guest as well. But I really hope that it has added value. And what I will always say to people is that I do hope that you keep listening, keep learning, and keep growing. Thank you all very much. And Chris, again, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.